All right, welcome back. This is going to be part 87 of my presentation on the flood and Noah's Ark. And we are going to continue on with the topic of flood legends. Flood legends. I'm not sure if I can finish this topic up with this video, but I'm going to give it my best. I'm going to give it my best. So it may be a little longer than some of the other videos, but I'll see if I can. If you see me start to sweat, it's because I just came inside from mowing grass. I originally didn't plan on doing a second video, but I got done with everything somewhat early, and I don't have anything. I took a shower, so I'm sure not gonna go out there and get in the heat again. It's pushing 90 degrees outside, so I know it's well over 90 degrees with the heat index. And we got good old North Carolina humidity to add into that. You could cut it with a knife. It's so thick. And so I am whooped. And so I push mow my grass. I use a push mower. And so it gives me a good workout. It's 4 miles. It's 3.8 miles to be exact. But with everything else that I do after I push mow, I end up putting well over 4 miles into my walk when I'm out in the yard. So I get a good workout out in the yard, a good sweat. But let's go ahead and let's get started. If you remember from the last video, this is the map that I showed here of samples of what they called flood myths. Now that word myths, now we've come to know myth as something that's fake. It's not real. It's, you've heard the mythological, that type of thing. The Titans, that type of stuff. And so it's something that we would think is something as being not true. But in actuality, when you break down that word, it comes from the Greek word mythos, which means a story, speech, or legend. And it may be fictional, but it also may be true. It may be true. Now, the information that I got also mentioned the Big Bang Theory as being what they called a living myth. A living myth. I hate they did that because that is one that is not true, and I don't want them to give the inclination to people that the Big Bang myth theory has some truth to it, because it doesn't. It does not. That is strictly what we would think of as far as a myth being fake and not real. That one would fall into it. And so, but they did give the Big Bang as a living myth because it's like it's alive. It's constantly changing and evolving as the years go on. And I've spoken to lots of evolutionists. Whenever I bring up where their theories came from, they all of a sudden start backpedaling and say, well, we don't believe like that anymore. We don't do that anymore. Most uniformitarians don't believe that anymore. They don't believe that stuff anymore, but they still hold true to the geologic ages and stuff. And so, again, I don't want to get on my soapbox because I really can. And so, but if you look at this map here, it breaks it down. If you want to freeze the video and look over this, you can. But there's literally, guys, there's legends and stories all over the world. And so, pick you one. And so between 270 to 300 plus flood legends, with about 30 of them being in writing. And so, pick you a flood legend. And so a lot of people that don't believe it say, well, if it was true, if the flood really happened all over the world, it seems like every culture would have a story. Well, you got to understand, there's one thing that they're not getting, is that what happened after the flood? Well, the Tower of Babel was right after the flood. And then all these cultures that we have today, the nationalities that we have today, not races. There is no such things as other races of people. There's other nationalities. There's only one race, and that's the human race. There's no other races of humans. There's only one race. And after Babylon, when the confusion of languages happened, everybody broke up into the languages they could understand. Well, they took this knowledge of their history of the flood and Babel with them. And that's how you get these other stories all over the planet. You get these stories. Now, through time and because of oral languages being, passed down, oral stories and stuff, they get exaggerated and stuff gets taken away from it. But the same flavor of the flood, the Babel, most of it, the ones that have the Tower of Babel, will hold true. For the most part, if you was to hear the story and you have a good working knowledge of Genesis and the story of the flood and Babel, you can say, oh yeah, you can pick it up quite easily. And so, but there are stories all over the world. Just like there's evidence all over the world for the flood, there's evidence in cultures also. And so, but at any rate, and then I showed you this chart here, how all these cultures have, it matches the storyline. Some of them not as much as others, but you can still pick it up. And then how many percentages, what do they match? And again, if you want to stop this, I went through all of these on my last video. So if you want to, go through each one of these and see the percentages, how they match, then, so be it. But guys, there's more to it than what meets the eye here. I mean, it's just a little bit more than just coincidence. Let's just put it that way. So let's go through some more flood legends here. Let's look at the Grand Canyon flood legends. The Grand Canyon flood legends. I'm gonna try these words here, so forgive me if I do mispronounce them. It's the Haulapai. So however you pronounce that, the Indians, the people of the tall pines, have an ancient pictographs with a flood story. And this is how it goes. First pictograph depicts rain fell on the earth for 45 days. The rising waters wiped out all the peoples, with the lone exception of an old man atop Spirit Mountain. The Creator eventually sent a bird to the man with instructions to dig with a ram's horn into the foot of the mountain to enable the waters to drain. The man obeyed, and soon the bird returned a second time with grass in its beak to inform the man that the waters had receded. The second pictograph depicts a vessel carrying 8 passengers across the waters, from whom all the peoples of the earth were descended. Interesting. 8 passengers. That matches the biblical narrative. The Havasupai Indians. The Havasupai Indians, the people of the blue-green waters. The medicine man prepared a hollow log for a young girl, animals and provisions to survive the great flood. The rains came and the hollow log floated on the water many days. The flood waters covered the whole earth, killing all the people. The log eventually came to rest at Grand Canyon, and this young girl became the mother of all peoples. The next one, the American Plains. Giants on the earth offended the Creator, which was that right there, Tirawa. So he drowned them in a flood. Then he made the first man and woman who became the ancestors of the Pawnee people. Pawnee people. Now, for those of you biblical students, there are some debate on Genesis 6 when they talks about that there were giants in the earth in those days. I believe there's something to it. I do. I am one of those that believe there's something to it. But they actually talks about how the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair and took wives of all that they chose, and they procreated with them. And these giants came from these unions. And so again, there's a debate with some, not all creationists or not all Christians believe that. And so, but there is a lot of evidence to support it. And so it's real interesting here that they would say giants on the earth offended the Creator, because it was just after that it mentioned the violence on the earth after this unions, and that God decided to destroy the earth. It's really interesting that they would say that. And so I thought that was very interesting. Now, next, the Hudson Bay. Hudson Bay, one of the gods became angry at the giants. Here we go again with giants, and decided to drown them in a flood. But he warned a man to build a large canoe. The man sent out an otter who retrieved dirt from which the man made, the man remade the earth. All right, let's go to another one. Peru. The creator, Viracocha, sent a flood to destroy the unruly giants. Here we go with giants again. He had made. Only 2 giants survived in a boat, which landed at that, wherever that is. I don't want to mispronounce that. The creator then made animals to fill the earth, and he made people from clay. Now, I will say this. Now, the atmosphere before the flood was much different than it is now. You can see that with the plants and the animals that are we find in fossils that were enormous. Now, there is no doubt in my mind that humans were much bigger than they are now. They could have been 10 to 12 feet. And so on the average. And so it is very well possible that that's what they're talking about too. But then when it talks about the giants that came from these unions, who knows how big these people were, we know. Could they have actually been upwards of 18 or 20 feet tall? Is it possible, guys, that could be the case? And so, I'm just throwing this at you. I'm just throwing it at you. But there is no doubt in my mind that the people before the flood grew much taller than the people today. Now, going on, Scandinavia. When Odin killed the first frost giant, I guess that's Ymir, his blood deluged the earth. The frost giant, Bergomir, and his wife survived in a hollowed out tree. Going on to the next one, Acadia. Angry over human noise, the gods decided to flood the earth. But the kind goddess Ea warned whatever that name is, I'm not going to try to pronounce that one, to build a cube-shaped ark to save his family and animals from the worldwide flood. Tanzania. God told 2 men to take seeds and animals onto a boat so they could survive the mountain covering flood. These men sent out a dove and then a hawk to see if the earth had dried up. Australia Aborigines also have flood legends. Skeptics often claims that these came from Christian missionaries. However, some of the legends were gathered by secular anthropologists before missionaries had reached the tribes. Also, in some cases, missionaries told the tribes the biblical Noah account, and the tribes related that they had their own version. Western Australia. I'm going to say, I'm not going to try that. I know I'm going to screw it up. And this guy and his family survived a worldwide flood on a raft. He sent birds to see if the waters had receded. Pleased by the smell of cooking kangaroo, the god, I'm going to say, Gaja, placed a rainbow in the sky to stop the rain clouds. Very interesting. Going on to the next one. In the deep jungles near the Amazon River in South America, Dr. Alexandra Aitkenavov, 1957, a world expert on the languages of that region, among others, said, without their language and its structure, people are rootless. In recording it, you are also getting down the stories and folklore. If those are lost, a huge part of a people's history goes. These stories often have a common root that speaks of a real event, not just a myth. For example, every Amazonian society ever studied has a legend about what? A great flood. All right, let's stop right there. When we come back, we're going to continue on with flood legends, and we're also going to get into some really neat aspects, some things that I've heard about and that I'm going to share with you. I'm sure some of you guys have heard about some of this stuff, So I looked into it to find out how much truth there is to what they're saying. And I know I'm being kind of open-ended with this, but believe me, well, it's going to make more sense when we get into it. But we're going to look at some things. We'll look at some really neat things with names and all, and just really, it's wild. I will say one thing right now, guys. This thing right here, this book that seemed like nobody wants anything to do with, is more alive than you can ever imagine. It's absolutely spooky what's in this. And the more I've studied it through the years, and the more I even get into some of the things that we're going to be talking about, boy, I tell you what, for people to make such a ridiculous statement that man just made this thing up is beyond me. Is beyond me. And so, but you guys take care. We're going to look at some more interesting things when we come back next time.